Hello, and welcome back to another Tech Articles. This one is going to be about InstaWP using Flowmattic to connect InstaWP to create a new website based on a template or theme or plugin. And I'm going to do a couple of ways to do that, and I'm going to show you that. I've built a custom app for Flowmattic to accommodate all of this using their API. Unlike the rest of my videos where I've shown you how to build custom apps and the workflows, I'm going to go through the workflows. I will go through with an oversight of the custom app, but I'm not going to build it from scratch because my concern would be, given the amount of actions and the details that need to go into it, the video will just be unmanageably long. We'll be in with a region of a 2-hour video. So rather than do that, if there's enough demand for it, I'm happy to build it in a separate video, just building out some of the API stuff or the workflows from scratch, or even modifying the workflows. And I'll keep the templates around for a little bit. But I didn't want to bore you with watching stuff that I'd already done. You'd already seen me create a custom app. I have the Cloudflare one that I launched on the channel earlier in the week, last week, and yeah, I just didn't think that we should get a 2-hour video on setting stuff up when actually I can probably reduce it to about 45 minutes, and you don't have to watch the same stuff again and again and again, but you'll still learn, you'll still understand what's done, so that you can fault find, so that you can do. But it'll make it quicker, it'll make it easier to watch, and we won't be recycling the same things over and over again. It's kind of like if you were to show a design process, you wouldn't show you add in the same design class 50 times. You'd assume once you've seen it once, you'd do it. I'm happy to put a link to the building your own custom app tutorial in the description below, and as I said, I'm happy to do that, but please let me know if that's what you want to do. So as I said, today's going to be about connecting InstaWP, and for those of you who don't know anything about InstaWP, I have lots of videos about InstaWP. I like InstaWP. I use it a lot, particularly for making these videos. In fact, I use GridPane, InstaWP, and I've got a direct admin instance that I use shell for WPCLI to produce these sites, because obviously I use a lot of sites and terminate them quite quickly. So it's easy. One of the easiest ways of doing that is with InstaWP. I have an early version of InstaWP from when they were on AppSumo. It's not a lifetime deal, but it is heavily discounted. I use it a fair amount. And yeah, it's powerful. It has a decent API. And I thought I'd show you an example of how, on a low scale anyway, depending on what plan you have, because I do believe they offer this as an enterprise solution. So if you're a big plugin developer or a big designer, you're probably going to go for the webhooked enterprise solution. But this is how you could do it on a smaller scale. For example, one of the use cases I thought would be if you're a small plugin developer and or a designer selling pre-made themes, you might want to be able to send the package out for people to see what it would look like in, I don't know, the admin area. Say you customize the admin area. I will say that there are some issues in this method, which you can do additional things to prevent. For example, as it is currently designed, there will be an admin user. Now, you could run a command after install, and again, if there is demand for that, I'm quite happy to record a video on post creation commands with InstaWP to add in a user account. And of course, if you're doing a template, you could also add that user to that template, and at the level that you want, with the restrictions that you want. And then it'll be that the username and password are static, but it's the web address that changes for each customer. And you could do that with the workflow that we show today. So yeah, that's InstaWP. Obviously, the linchpin in all of this are bridge between everything that we work with is Flowmattic, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Flowmattic. I use Flowmattic a lot. A lot of my videos are on Flowmattic, and yeah, it's our linchpin today. It's going to do all of the joining bits. Joining bits is going to bridge between our instance where we have the form, which is in a separate instance in my case, than the Flowmattic instance, it's going to bridge that to Flowmattic, from Flowmattic to InstaWP, and from Flowmattic will then send out the email with the login details from all of that. So Flowmattic underlines all of this. You could probably use other providers, but why would you when you've got Flowmattic? So the first thing I'm going to do is show you it in API mode. So I'm going to go through the InstaWP API at Postman. I've discussed Postman before, and I'm just going to show you one or two of these. And in fact, I'm going to show you create site from template. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're going to use this, and you need to understand some of the nuances between them. In my case, I've assumed you've got a private template, so I've built the API around a private template rather than a shared template. So you need to not send certain details for a private site, i.e. has subscribed, and I've done that in the API document in the custom app. I've done that. So the custom app and this will send the equivalent of this curl command here when it's generating a site, and in this case some of this isn't relevant because we need to use the private site information, but it will send to this API point, it will send our bearer token. I will show you how to generate a bearer token. I will also show you how to add it into Flowmattic, although it won't be my real bearer token because I've already added that. It'll just be an example, a fake one, just to show you how to do it, to make sure you can do it. So we would need to send here a template slug, which I have ways of getting in the custom app via the template system. A name for the site. I recommend you never set a name. Unless you have a custom domain, there is no guarantee that name is free. And as far as I can tell from testing the API, it will always fail. If it's not, it doesn't default to giving you a random name. It doesn't poll for an option. It just fails. It just tells you it failed because the name's not available. So don't set a name. Is reserved is a flag, and if I flick over to my InstaWP dashboard, this site is reserved, this site isn't. So if it's reserved, it doesn't have an expiry. And that's basically it. That's how you send it through the API. You send these details, and it will produce a template-based site on that. And in the custom app, we have now added get configuration, which is down here, which lists available configurations. Create site, which we've just done, but I also just can create site from scratch and from template. We've also got list templates, as I explained earlier, from templates. I haven't done create or delete because they're not relevant in this instance, but you will need to do that. One I couldn't find on here, but I did find in their write-up, is check progress. And I have added check progress in because it's important for templates. If templates are large, because they contain large amounts of images or plugins or any of the things that make a WordPress installation large, it takes a little bit longer than the almost instant create site from scratch. So you need to poll that to make sure you're not sending the details too early to frustrate your users. And depending on the size of your template, you may need to modify the flow to add additional points of check-in before you send your email. For my template, I've done it many times, and actually what's built works 100% for the template I have. Actually, one poll is enough, but I added the iteration so that it was there for you to use later if you needed it. And you could just multiply that iterator until you get to send email. So that's really the API documentation. And as I say, whenever you're looking to build a custom app, you're looking to work with such a program, I strongly recommend checking out their API documents. The more documentation you can look at, the more you understand that documentation, the better. So we're going to go back to the InstaWP dashboard now. And as I explained to you earlier, this is a reserve site because it's got this flag. This isn't a reserve site. I'm going to flag this on and off so you can see the difference. So confirm, that's now a reserve site. Stops it from counting down to expiry. And it does. I won't do this one because it will automatically expire. Now, to generate your API key, your bearer key, which is vital to this process, you need to go up here to your team. Then you need to go to my account. And you would go to your API tokens here. and then you would generate a new token. I'm not going to generate a token, but you do need that information to add your key into Flowmattic. So I'm going to go over to Flowmattic now, and we're going to pretend that I took a key from here. I'm just going to put in some random gibberish, and I'll set it up as a connection so that you can see how to add your connection, because you're going to need that connection, because it's not automatically added in, it's unique to each account, and actually it's a good way of reiterating the need for connect. So back to our Flowmattic instance, where I'm going to go out to the front page, and I'm going to select connect. And in here, you see I've already got my bearer token installed, but I'm going to create a new API connection. Not an integration, even though do have a custom app. It's not. It's a new API connection, and we'll just put in here fake InstaWP, and we'll tell them it's a bearer token, and we'll just put some gibberish in here and save connect. And that's it. That's how easy it is to add a bearer token to Flowmattic, and now we can use that in any workflow as our connection. But I'm going to delete that now so it doesn't confuse me later. But that is quite simply how easy it is to add a bearer token or an auth to Flowmattic for use. And that's really it. Now I'm going to show you the two workflows that we're going to be working with, only to show you that they both start with a webhook. They both start with a webhook, and in fact, if we open them quickly, this one finishes in Y2RR, and this one finishes in ZNBL. That's going to be relevant in a minute when you see the form, our trigger site. Now, our trigger site is a standard WordPress installation. It's actually the one I used for the ProForms video that I hadn't deleted yet, and I've just installed Fluent Forms onto it. The reason I picked Fluent Forms is because A, I have it, B, I like it and I know how it works, and B, I like the fact it's got conditional webhooks. That allows me to have one form going to two separate workflows and deliver them based on wherever they need to go. So this is our form that we're going to use in this example, and I'm assuming this would be a modal or some form of click capture. So it just has a name, a first name, a last name, an email address, and a drop down. There's nothing special about any of these except for the layout of the drop down, where I have given them a name. The name is irrelevant, but this data is vital in the workflow. So this is what if I'm going to go to InstaWP in a second, you see here basic WordPress install, cadence with blocks with tools, and 2024 Bricks blueprint are from InstaWP. Now this one here, I will say my template does appear to have the slug of that. I'm not sure every template has the name as the slug, because I can think of situations where we might all have different templates with the same name, and that might not happen. It might be that the API is able to only separate them out via your user details, via your API key. So it might be the case that you don't need to do one of the steps in this, but I put it in just in case they change the way they work as well, because it's the more robust way of making sure we don't get failure. So I'm going to head over to InstaWP and just explain these three here, and then I'll come back to this web form. So we're going to go back to our InstaWP dashboard. We're going to get out of this and go back to here. Oh, actually, I want to open configurations first. So if we go to configurations, you can see here we've got blank WordPress installed. That's the name of one of my configurations. And this one here with cadence, which is a set of cadence clips in the WordPress section. And that's the name of it. So that's what I'm calling. I'm calling this configuration. You can't call it by name. You have to call it by ID. But thanks to a couple of PHP snippets, we can poll the data that we get and get the ID by using the name, because we know the name, we don't know the ID. So that's all sorted, but that's why it's important that they match. And so, as I said, in your form site, these can be anything you like. They can be client friendly. It's what they send to the webhook that's important. And that is it. It's a basic form. There is nothing special about this form except for the fact that it's integrated with webhook. So I'm going to go over to settings and integration in Fluent Forms Pro, and I am using Fluent Forms Pro here. It's the only way you get webhook. And I have two webhook integrations here, one to our Y2RR and one to our ZNBL. And what I've enabled here is conditional logic. And the two that are configurations need to go to the config webhook, which is what this is. So that's the Cadence Suite and the almost blank install. And the one that is from template needs to send the bricks 2024 template blueprint details. So that's exactly what it looks for, our awesome template. And it sends that as form data to our WordPress instance with Flowmattic installed. And this allows me to use one form to trigger both webhooks remotely, but equally have them doing separate things, because otherwise we would have to have a whole load of routers to route us around, and actually that's going to be way too complicated to explain, and you might not want that. You might want to be able to just turn one off. You might, for example, do lots of plugins and have lots of different plugins and lots of different templates. Just say you have 5 plugins or 5 templates. You've then got to go through and find them and remove them through that iteration. It would be enormous. This way we get to have one for each, and we get to control that. So it's a basic web form. It's, as I say, you have to use Pro if you're using Fluent Forms for this. I don't know about other form plugins, but for Fluent Form it has to be Pro. But I do like the fact that there is conditional routing via conditional logic here for these webhooks, and it's really useful. So I'm going to head over now to our Flowmattic instance, and I'm going to go over our custom app and just show you some of the functions that are in our new custom app. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize all of this. I will upload the custom app JSON and the 2 workflow JSONs to the comments. They will be in the description below. I will also add a link to a gist with the 2 snippets, PHP snippets that we use in these, so that you've got those to go and download. So you don't have to copy any of this code. You don't have to memorize any of this code. It's there for you. Just understand what's going on, and then you should be able to reproduce what we make. So I'm going to head over to Flowmattic, and I'm going to come out of this workflow, and I'm going to head to custom app, and you will see that we have a nice new custom app with the fave icon of InstaWP. And if we edit this app, you'll see that it's a standard app. I've put no authentication at the app level because I prefer to do it at the flow level, because what happens if I have more than one account? It means I can separate them out there and then. There's no triggers for this app. They're all actions, and we did discuss them earlier. I've added several actions, and some of these aren't even used. Delete a site isn't currently used. I thought it might be useful, so I've added it in for you. The one that I will mention is install plugins and themes. I couldn't get this to work. Their documentation says that it should. Let's see if I can find it. I can't even find it in here. There it is. It says it's a put, and the API point in here doesn't accept put as an option, so it doesn't work. I don't know if it's temporary or at the time of this recording, or if it's broken, or if they're changing that particular API point, but I've added it in there. I've left it in there in case it is temporary, because it is another way that you could install plugins and themes for this sort of item. So as I built it to test it, I've left it in, but it doesn't work at the point of recording. So back to Flowmattic. So we can get configurations. Now that's going to be useful for when we were talking about configurations within InstaWP, and that's going to pull these through for us. If we go back to Flowmattic, create a staging site. We've done create a staging site. That's the, if we go back to here, that's create a site from scratch. That follows this API information. And if we go back to Flowmattic and list sites, and if we go back to the API, list sites is this one here, and it runs this API command to get a list of sites. You need list sites if you're going to run delete to be able to delete a site, so that's why I've added list sites. If we go back to Flowmattic, list templates, we need list templates to show templates, and I realised I didn't show my template, so I'm going to go back to InstaWP and go to templates. I only have one on here, and that is the bricks blueprint, and it's not active on any sites, and that's what this is going to pull, so it'll only pull the one, but that's what it'll pull from the API. And then we've got the one that doesn't work, install plugins and themes. Then we can create a site from private template, which is we're going to need to be pulled from that template list. Check site progress. As I say, I don't use this when I'm creating a staging site. It's pretty fast when it's creating a staging site, but when I'm creating from a private template, I have to use it. I get to about 79% before I need to poll, before it polls again, and after that it's usually done. But if your site's particularly large, I imagine you might have to do this more than once, so it's there and done. And delete a site is there as well. So that's our custom actions in our custom InstaWP. They're all the actions we will need to do what we need to do today. So I'm going to head over to our form, and I'm going to show you this in action. So I'm going to head over to our site. I'm going to head to pages, and I'm going to view try our plugin on the front page, and I'm going to put my name in here, and I'm going to put my email address in here. Hopefully this delivers. I hate doing emails on test sites. And I'm going to select an almost blank install, and you'll see that submits through to our Flowmattic instance, and that's it. That's all the web form does. It takes that data and sends it to Flowmattic. So this would, as I said, this would ideally be a modal or some sort of CTA on your site to try our plugin, try it out, try our theme, try our template. That's how I see that trigger working. So if we head over to Flowmattic, what that's done, because we picked a configuration, is it's running through the configuration workflow, which is this one here, and it will take that webhook trigger. It will run. We'll run through it quickly. It'll take that trigger. It will then get the configurations. It will call the PHP function, which we'll go through this in detail in a second. Then it should create our staging site and send us an email. So we should already have created our site. So I'm going to go to InstaWP and go to our dashboard, and hopefully we have a new site there. Looks like we do. We just check when this was made. 2 hours 58 minutes. So there you go. It's a 3-hour setting in the current flow, and that has just been made by our flow. I don't know if I got an email. Let's have a look. Spam. Currently don't have the email. We'll see if it turns up once it checks. But the email, oh, there you go. It comes in as while we're waiting. So it's all done, and then it sends a email to us. And in this case, the email says that it's an hour. I actually adjusted it in testing to prove that it works to myself. So we'll change it to an hour for our next version so that it comes in as an hour, and we'll turn that reserved off as well so that you can see that it creates the next, when we go through that workflow, we'll take that reserve tag off so we can see straight away that it's an hour. It's no longer reserved. But all this does is tell us that it's a basic WordPress install, which is what we selected. This is our site, this is our username, this is our password, and this email all comes out of the workflow. And that is quite simply how the workflow works. And if we head back to our Flowmattic instance, and we will now go through this particular workflow in a little bit more detail. So the webhook gets triggered, it sends our data. This then gets our configurations using the InstaWP app. Obviously, you have to make sure that you put your connect in. Anywhere you see the W, make sure that you've chosen your InstaWP bearer token as connect. It will not work without a bearer token. It will just fail. From there, we get configurations, and the configurations come back like this. A big old chunk of data. Now we could get them in a simple format, but then we've got to text format it. So I actually thought it was easier in this case to do them as functions, PHP functions. I quite like the PHP function of Flowmattic. So what happens here is it sends our webhook drop down one, so that would be the actual configuration name in InstaWP and the data that came back from our hook. That's two individual items to this function, find ID by name, and it returns back the ID number, telling us it's correct, and then the ID number. This is the ID number of that configuration. Now that code snippet is over here, and it is find configuration, find ID by name, and this is it. It's a very simple snippet. It just takes the JSON, looks through the data to find a match, finds a match, and then returns the ID based on that match. That is all it does. In fact, that's all these three snippets do. Finds a template in exactly the same way, returning the slug. The site ID does exactly the same, except it returns the site ID rather than the config ID. And as I said, I will put links in the description to a gist with, actually I'll do 3 separate gists to make it easier, so of these 3 items, so that you've got them, they're there, that they're freely available. You don't need to write them, you don't need to remember these, they are there. And when we go to the function, I will remind you on the next workflow, I will remind you that I will upload them. You don't have to screenshot them or rewrite them. They will be provided. So we go back to our Flowmattic instance. So that then returns our 32981, which we know is an ID. Then it creates a site. And to do that, and while we're here, I'm going to make the changes I said I would make. I'm going to change this to 1 hour. I'm going to say it's not reserved. So it goes to the InstaWP app. Again, it goes create a staging site, is reserved, no. Configuration ID is the configuration ID that we got from our PHP function. Expiry sends it out. As I said, I never send site name because of my concern with regards to clashing. Again, it's an InstaWP, so we've connected. Simple response is fine. The response comes back. Site installation is working. Site installation is complete. Your website is ready. Then it returns back our details, which are our URL, username and password, and a data ID for the process. And we use this data ID later in the template, but we don't use it in this particular one. So that's the return from the InstaWP create a staging site. And the final step is to send them an email. And that's just set up to send an email, the email you saw, and I'll go back to that in a second if I didn't delete it. And in this case, it just says you want to test our awesome app. It sends to the email from the webhook trigger from our email form. It says here is your site. This is a link to the URL returned by the InstaWP site creation. The first name is taken from our webhook. I will scroll back up to the top and just say this. In terms of webhook return, I've not taken it in simple format because I want to be able to get first name and second name separately. If you have them in simple format, they come together and then you have to do a text modification. I didn't want to bother with that. I just wanted to have them back, so I've got it coming in as is. That might be a Fluent Form quirk rather than anything else, but I just wanted to raise that as an issue in case you can't replicate exactly what I've got here and you're using Fluent Forms. Obviously it depends on your form plugin and how you send that data, and you might want a different email completely, but you see the options and the power here. So you wanted to test our awesome plugin, insert into brackets the drop down of what it was. Well, here you go, the site is good for the next hour. As I said, I've now set it to an hour. Username, password are given. Please remember it's good for an hour. I'm going to go back up and save and test this action here so that it's done. Then I'm going to save that workflow, and that's it. That's our site. That's how we create a site. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our form trigger and reload it, and I'm going to do the same again. Hopefully save all the details this time, and I'll select Cadence Suite this time. I'm going to submit the form, and while that's doing that, I'll show you this email. This is the email we sent before, and you can see this is the email populated, the same title with the site. This was what we selected. It says it's good for an hour. This is the site, username, password. As I say, the email can say whatever you want. You just pulled your Flowmattic instances across, And that's it really. So that's working behind the scenes to add a new site to our Flowmattic. While it does that, I'm not going to rush out and show. We'll let that do its thing behind the scenes, which is probably already done, but we'll let it do that. We're going to head back to Flowmattic, and we'll keep an eye out on the emails and for a return to the emails, and then we go back to Insta in a second. I just want to go through private template quickly, so that you understand how that works. I'm not going to go back to our PHP function and explain that again. I explained it once, but we've used a new PHP function here to get template ID. Again, triggered on a webhook. This one is then asking for a list of our templates, because we obviously need templates because we've selected template for this one. That will return a list of templates again as a data dump of JSON. We've used a function. This function gives that same data, uses the drop down to find the template in this case. And you can see the synergies here, the duplication in the apps, in the flows, and how actually once you've done it once and once you understand how to do it, you can quickly pull a different scenario together. We're using the same app and the same data because there's a lot of similarities here. We then go to create site from private template, which again is an InstaWP function, so it's going to use the response for the template slug. It's not reserved. You have to send a PHP version for this, so I'm sending 8.2. Again, my connect, and that will send the data to InstaWP, which will return a return telling us it's happening. And if we scroll all the way down here, this one's finished, I think, actually, or it's come back. But it will tell you what's left in terms of the build. But obviously, this one obviously built fast when I tested. And now this one checks the site's progress, and it uses the data task ID, which is this one here, to poll the servers at InstaWP and check the current status of installation. Once it does that, it then goes into a router where if that was fine, it just goes to email and sends it off. If it's not, site isn't completed yet. So if condition isn't met, if this says progress rather than completed, it will then do a delay, and I've set the delay for 20 seconds, which is more than enough for my template, and then it'll check the progress again. As I said, you could build on this. You could duplicate this stage 3 or 4 times if you have a very large template, or you find the system is slow, and then once it's done that, it will form the rest of the process and send the email. And just like our previous item, it will then begin to build out our email, send our email. You wanted to test our blueprint, here you go. Dear webhook first name, and it sends all the same details. And that's our 2 workflows. They are very similar. They work on 2 different functions, but because we understand the API now, because we understand how InstaWP works, we can do that. So I'm going to save that workflow. I'm going to head over to InstaWP dashboard and refresh, and hopefully we have more than 3 stages sites. Oh, we have 5. I must have double clicked. So we have our sites with an hour expiry, and that's it. That was created using our, let's delete these so that when we come to send our template, it's easier to work that out, that they were sent by the template, because we'll do a template one now. And that's it. I don't know if we got an email. We did get an email. Look at that. And then we got an email with our details in it telling us it was cadence blocks that we were using. The cadence with blocks this time we were using. So I'm going to head back over to our trigger site. I'm going to reload this for the last time. I'm going to put some details in that we discussed before. And this time I'm going to select our awesome template. And I'm going to submit our form. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the dashboard, and I'm going to refresh the dashboard, and you'll see that it says there's 3 staging sites, but there's not 3 staging sites because it knows one's coming, but it's not finished yet. And this is the danger of sending out our email too early. If we send our email out too early, it'll come to our recipient before our thingy is built, before our site is built. And that's what the delay is for. That's why we are polling the InstaWC check site. Interestingly enough, as I said at the beginning, I couldn't find a reference to that in their API documentation. So how I found it on an article in their on their website rather than in their API documentation. So it's worth remembering that not everything is in Postman. That APIs update and change, and you need to look around sometime. I knew there must have been a way because it was giving me data ID, and the templates weren't immediately being built. So I knew there must be a way to poll, but I just didn't know how to do it. So if we go back to our dashboard, refresh, we must be getting close to building that template now. And that's it. Our template is built. You can see it's got a full expiry of time, and this one you can't set. Currently, you cannot set an expiry time for templates like you can with plugin configurations. I don't know why. To me, if you're building the API, why you wouldn't want a template site to be able to have the same functionality, I don't know. That's an InstaWP setting that they need to do. It wouldn't be hard to add it from a Flowmattic point of view to be able to set that, and that is it. It's created our app for us. If we go to our email, I don't think we've received the email yet, but we'll receive the email once it knows that for a fact that the site's done. It's probably stuck in our delay cycle, but yeah, it's practically instant in terms of how it all comes together. It happens so fast. All the moving parts come together, and yeah, it produces your site. And we go back to our Flowmattic dashboard. We can see here. In fact, if we go to our Flowmattic dashboard and I just check, it's probably sent the email by now. It just hasn't arrived in my email box. So email logs. You want to test our blueprint? Here you go. It went 2 minutes ago and it hasn't quite arrived yet. So it's done. It's sent. The email's sent. It's triggered. It's gone. It's just not in the email box yet. And if we look at this email, we can see it says that it was the Bricks 2024 blueprint and the details for the site. And that is quite literally how simple it is. So that is creating a site in Flowmattic, or creating a site in InstaWP using Flowmattic as your bridge between your form and your InstaWP installation. And that doesn't have to be a web form. I've used a web form because for me they're the easiest way of showing you a trigger and providing the details. That could have been a WooCommerce button, or it could have been a link in one of your members areas to try a plugin before they buy it, or to I don't know, load a lesson. Maybe you're a tutorial provider or a course provider, and you want to load a InstaWP site for a course user to play around with a setup that you've created as part of the course, so they can see what you've done, kind of like I've just shown you here with my setup here. You could do all of that with this, and although I'm saying with InstaWP here, most of these providers have these sort of things, have API interactions. GridPane does, Server Avatar I believe does. So you could actually do this, and although the self-deleting function, I like the self-deleting function of InstaWP and the fact that it clears them down and closes them down for you, there is nothing to stop you from putting a delay in your Flowmattic. If we go back to Flowmattic, there's nothing to say after you, and I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to build this out, but there's nothing to say, for example, that in our workflow, after we've created our workflow here, that let me pick this one here, and I won't save this because I want to be able to download these for you. There's nothing to say we couldn't put here a delay for, I don't know, 2 hours, let's say. That now puts a 2-hour delay in place, and in 2 hours we couldn't run a new API command, and I know it's in there and it won't work because we'd have to poll the site information. In fact, let's just build it out. I'm not going to test it. I'm not going to did I delete the no, I didn't, did I? I'll do it. I'll fabricate it and see if it works. There's nothing to say that, so if I push delete a site and site ID, I'm going to assume here, I'm not going to get one, I'm going to assume is, if we go to the InstaWP, is this bit here. So I'm going to go back to our Flowmattic instance, and I'm going to put that there, and I'm just going to, unauthenticated. This is why you have to put your InstaWP bearer token in. False message, the requested rules not found. Okay, so that isn't what our site ID, we'd have to put that custom function in. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is I'm not going to build this out. I haven't prepared it. Although the code is in here, I'm not going to put it together. This is what I was trying to avoid in making this tutorial hours long. But there's nothing to say that you couldn't do exactly what we've just done there. Create a delay for 2 hours, then run a delete to automatically delete your site, and that's it. You could do that with any provider, be that GridPane, Server Avatar, RunCloud. In fact, InstaWP is built on RunCloud, so their API should be relatively similar in terms of how it responds and what it does. So yeah, there is nothing to say that you are locked into InstaWP with this, and this is just showing you how you can use the same tools to do the same thing with multiple providers. In this instance, I've used InstaWP. I have access to InstaWP. A lot of people use InstaWP, but you can make the functionality that I like of deleting this by doing this and doing some tweaking. And all we'd have to do to get that to work really would be to go through this process here for the delay. Then we'd probably have to do get a site. I'll make the steps so that we know what I think we would need to do. We'd then have to go to list sites, and then from list sites, I suspect we would then need to take. Let's get that as a thingy response. Save and test again. So we've got a data response there. Then we'd put a PHP function in here to call our code snippet, which is site ID by name. And this is where I said I'm not going to build it, I'm going to end up building it, isn't it? And then I'd have to send my parameters, individual parameters, and I need to go back to my code snippet and take what they were called. They were JSON input. And in fact, it doesn't hurt for you to see this in a way, I suppose. And the other one was called site name. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, because where I was a bit of an idiot, and we're going to copy that because we're going to use that to delete our site, and our JSON value is our list site option, and it's going to be data. And if we do that, it should now give us a response, which is this one here, and I'll put that response into delete site, and hopefully this works, because as I say, not prepared this at all. PHP function response, save and test. Success. True, site deletion work in progress. And if we go over to our dashboard, it's gone. And that's it. You could do exactly what I just did there without using the custom, the InstaWP functions. I knew we had all the tools. I just needed to think about it for a second about the logic of how I put it together. Yeah, so hopefully that's of use to people. If you like the videos, if you would like to see more in depth, please let me know. But this has been a video connecting InstaWP via Flowmattic to deliver plugins and themes. If you like the video, please like, subscribe. If you would like to see a video on something, if you want more details on something, please leave a comment or on the video or on one of the Facebook groups. And yeah, please engage with me, and yeah, I hope this has been of use to people. Thank you very much.